Hello, and how are you? My name is Muhindo Mbarak, and I welcome you to our other class of learning how to create web applications using PHP. Today I'm going to introduce you to something completely new, and that is database. I'm going to explain to you what is meant by database, why do you need database in our web application. But most importantly, I'm going to introduce you to the language that we use to communicate to databases, and that is SQL. So we have a lot to cover, and I hope you're ready to do this with me. If you are, then let's get started. So in the very first place, we're going to begin by explaining what is meant by database. If you want to understand what is meant by database, just simply come to Google and search database, the word database meaning. Okay, so in simple terms, database means a container that we use to store the information on what is that we use to store information. Then we can use that information to dynamically update our web application. That is what made by database in simple terms. So it means that if we were to make if we were to make a website or web application that is going to serve many users, what we do, we don't create a separate website for each user, but what we do, we create a database for those users, and then we collect the information, and then we start dynamically showing that information that is relevant to particular users. So that's why we need databases. In simple terms, database is a container where we do what? Where we keep our information that is dynamic to the web application. For example, if you're going to collect the product's name and the prices, what we do, we create that information and keep it in the database, and then later we start querying or fetching that information from the database and display it in different parts of the screen of our web application. So you might have not got the whole concept at this moment if this is your first time to hear about databases, but along the way, don't worry. You're going to practice this, you're going to do practicals, and you'll understand everything as we start doing practicals. So in simple terms, you've now known that database is a place where we keep what? Where we keep the information. So it is just kind of separate technologies that we use to keep what? The information. For example, we said that we have PHP that we use to do the logic of what? Of the web application, but it's not PHP only. There are other also programming language like ASP, Java, and the rest, Python and the rest. But we chose PHP. So among the things that store the data, there are also many technologies. For example, you can come here and say examples of what? Database examples, okay? So you'll see we have my SQL, that is the most popular. At the moment, we have Microsoft Access, Microsoft SQL Server, we have Oracle, and others. So those are different types of, or examples of what? Of structured database. So these are different technologies, these are different companies, but they have one thing in common, and that is the language that we use to communicate with these databases. So that language is what we call SQL. So you can search on Google and search what is meant by SQL. So you'll understand what is meant by SQL by saying that SQL is what? Structured querying language. So it's a language that you use to query the what? The databases. So all the technology that we have looked at, like Oracle and the rest, MySQL, they support this SQL, but the only thing, they are just slight changes that we use to do what? To change in order to align to that particular technology. But all of them, they support one querying language. So that's what we're going to learn today, and then we're going to see how we can communicate to databases. So once you have a database, then your application will be dynamic. For example, you can have multiple users. You can now have being able to log in and being able to log out. You can be able to create a mobile application, a music application that can serve multiple songs at any time. You can be able to create a news application. You can be able to create an e-commerce application that can serve different products at different time. Why? Because you have the power, or you have the power of what? Of databases. So in simple terms, database is a place where we keep what? We keep our content. So since it's a place that to keep our dynamic content, it means that there is something big that you have to understand, how this database keeps that content, how we access it, and how we manipulate it. So we manipulate using a language called SQL, okay? And that's what we're going to learn today. And then we're also going to do we're going to do practicals of databases. So I think you've got enough introduction to database, but along the way, you're going to understand when you start doing practicals. So we are going to begin by looking at what's meant by really SQL. So let's get started now, okay? So to have database on your computer, first of all, you need to install it on your on your computer. But if you have already XAMPP in your computer, most of the time XAMPP comes with my SQL database, and it's the one that you're going to be using for practice. So if you already have XAMPP or WAMP in your computer, you'll have an interface like this one, okay? So once you have it installed, the next thing that you're going to do, you're going to start it, okay? You're going to start the database. So you have to click on Apache and you start the PHP, because this PHP, this Apache PHP, is the one that you're going to use to do what? To practice using interface to communicate to the database, okay? So you have to start this Apache. Then the next thing that you have to start is this MySQL, okay? This one. So you have to start those two. So once you start those two, then you'll be able to, if they start successfully, or if you install XAMPP, if you don't have XAMPP, just pause this video and do and install it, okay? Pause this video and install XAMPP on your Windows machine. If you already have it, don't bother, just start it. Make sure that you start my PHP Apache and then you start MySQL. Then you click on this admin, then it will take you to a place where you're going to do you're going to use to practice, okay, once they have started. So with that much said, so I'll hope that you successfully started installed XAMPP, and you successfully started the Apache, and you started the MySQL. So Apache is the server that we're going to use. Then MySQL is the database itself that we're going to use to do to practice or to test the SQL that you're going to learn, okay? So once you start those two, so for me, I have Mac, so I'll have to start it also. I'll just simply come here and open my MAMP, and then I click on start here. So when I click on start, it means that now my application has done has started when it shows here green, okay? So once it shows green, so the next thing will be now to proceed to the to the database, and I see the interface. So as I said that we're going to use PHP myadmin or PHP to communicate to our database. Though PHP is completely standalone programming language that it does not depend on on MySQL. Likewise to MySQL. But with PHP myadmin, it will be very simple for us to interface with with MySQL database. So if you're on Windows, just come and click on this icon. If you have successfully started, click on this icon of PHP myadmin, this one, okay, here. And then, or you can go to localhost, then stroke the port if you have the port, and then stroke the word PHP myadmin. So for me, I already have it. So I'm just going to proceed to my to my database by just simply coming here and say localhost stroke PHP myadmin. Okay. So if you're in Windows, you just simply write like this. I hope it will work. But for Mac, you have to do something like this. So when I open, this is what I will do. This is what I will see. Okay. So this is the interface. It is a PHP interface that you're going to use to practice the MySQL database or the SQLs. Okay. So I hope you can reach that point. If you can't reach that point, then please don't proceed the video. Just pause the video and fix everything until you can you can reach this point. So I've successfully reached here. So the next thing that I'm going to do, I'm now going to create the the database. But before we create the database, first of all, let's first understand really why we need databases. Okay, so databases, we say that they are just containers. So it means that when you're creating a database, you have to first consider, is this container really required? For example, right now we are learning we are learning databases themselves. So it means that we're going to need an independent database that we are going to use for practicing. So if you didn't know, every project that you create, it needs maybe at least, okay, for good practices, every project needs a separate database that you'll use to do what, to practice in it. Okay, or I mean to do that particular information of the project in it. For example, you're making a school management system, so it will be very good practice to do a specific database for a school management system. If you're making maybe a bank application, then do a separate database for bank application. If you're making maybe an e-commerce website or a store, what you do, you create for it an independent database. Why? Because you don't need this data to do what? To be mixed. So now we have we have our PHP admin. So the first thing that I'm going to do once we land here, let us first look at it. Here we have database, we have SQL, we have status, we have these accounts. So we'll look at these accounts as we proceed, but for now we may not even need to bother about them. Then we'll have the export if you want to export this database and the rest. So here we'll have a list of databases that are already in this particular database. So we're going to create a database that we're going to use for practicing. Okay, that we're going to use for practicing. Then as we proceed, then we'll start creating maybe a final project or a real project. That's when we create another again separate database. So let us go ahead and create the database for practicing. So creating a database is really straightforward. First of all, you can use the interface, this one, or you can use the query or the SQL and say create a database. So for the very first time, let us see how we can use an interface. So to use an interface, after you have arrived here successfully, the next thing you have to proceed is to click on databases. So if you click on databases, you'll see a list of other databases that are already existing. And to create your new database is really pretty simple. You just simply come here and put the name of your database and click on create. So when you click on create that database, it will be created for what? For you. So that is one way of how we can do it. We can create a database using the Using the interface. So the other way of creating database using the interface is through SQL. The other way of creating database, okay, is through what? Is through SQL. So let us look at the SQL that we use to create a database, so we can do what? We can understand. So you simply come to SQL. So in this tab of SQL, it is where we execute SQL commands. For example, you want to write any SQL and you want it to be executed. This is the place that you do what? We execute. So before we execute any SQL, first of all, let us look at all the databases that we have by just simply clicking on database, and then we'll see the list of all the databases that we already have in our project. So I'm going to create a new database. I'm going to call it practice. Okay. So I'll come here to SQL. So I've already shown you, like if you want to create a new database, you can just simply come database section here and write practice, for example, the database that you want. Okay, and then click on and create. But for me, I need to use SQL instead. So I'll simply click on SQL and then I come and create the database. So the command for creating the database, or the SQL of creating the database, we do it like this. We write the word create and then you would say database. Okay, and then after you put the name of the database. So I'm going to call it practice, like this. Then you put semicolon at the end. So when you execute this SQL, it is going to create for us a fresh and new container, or the fresh and new database called practice, if it does not exist. So you can as well first save this SQL so that you can reuse it later. And so for me, I'm going to save this SQL somewhere so that I should be able to do what? To share them with you. So I'll come and open my project of PHP that we've been using, and I'm going to create here a new file. Okay, I'm going to create here a completely new file that I'm going to use to do write the SQL. So just simply can say new file, and I'm going to call it number 20 underscore and 20 underscore database. 20 underscore database create. Okay, or I can say create database, I don't know, whatever, create. Okay, so let me just put everything here, databases. Okay, and then you have to put .sql. So .sql it means that you're putting the extension of SQL so that this file should be treated as a what? As a SQL file. So I'll press enter. So this is where I'm going to be writing my commands of what? Of SQL. So let us write again the command of doing what? Of creating a table. Of creating a database. Of course, we said we just simply write create in capital letters and then you write the word database. You may write even in them in small letters, but it's good practice. For the words or the keywords, you write them in capital letter. Then your own words, you write them what? In small letter. For example, then if what is following this is the name of the database. Now, since the name of the database is coming from us, so it will better be in what? In small letters. So I can say practice, but it is optional, but just good practice to do like that. So this is going to be a command that is going to create for us a database. So if you want to comment, you can do those two lines like this, then you'll be able to comment. Okay, so say create database, create database SQL. So this is just comment, it has no effect. Okay, so I'll go ahead and copy this SQL and then go to our PHP admin and then I click on what? On SQL, and then I paste there the SQL. So let us go ahead and run it. So to run the SQL, just simply come here on bottom and click on this go word. Then you'll see database has been created successfully. So if I try to create this database again, what does it mean? I can copy this command I created. They'll tell me that this database does already what? Already exist, which is really helpful. So if I come again to database and then I click on database section, you'll see that we will have one more database, which is practice. You can see here. So it means that we have successfully created our first database. So when you click on that practice, then you'll come to this section where you have nothing. Why? Because we have nothing because we have not added there anything. Okay, we have not added there anything in our database. So as we said that a database will be just a single container that will be supporting a single project or the single project that you'll be using to do a specific thing. For example, you're creating a school management system. So it means that you'll have one database for school management system. So it means that that container will contain multiple types of information, though it is just about school management system. So it means that it will have to contain students, it will have to contain teachers' information, it will have to contain the subjects' information, it will have to contain the marks, etc. Likewise, if you make a separate database of products, so it will maybe, of e-commerce, then it will contain the products, it will contain the orders and the rest. So for us, we've just created our own database. So it is here, independent, and we have not decided what it should contain. Okay, so to decide what it should contain and to put it there, you have to do what we call tables. So tables, they are if we come here and search what is meant by what database table. Okay, database table. So in simple terms, a table is now a group of a specific structure. You can see a table is a collection of of related data held in in table format. Okay, so a table is now just as it sounds, it is a structure that will hold specific information that is related to each other. For example, this is a table of what? This is a table of albums. Okay, so it means that albums, they have same information or related information, and they're being kept in in form of a table. As you can see, we're having album ID, album name. So all the records that are kept here, they have almost same structure. So information that have same structure, we keep it in what we call tables. Likewise to other things, like for example, this one these are customers, and you can see we are keeping the information of that is in same structure, and we're keeping them in one table. So there is no difference. So what you're going to do is we learn how to create now these tables and what they mean to us. Okay, so a database is the one that is about a particular project, and then tables, they are inside inside database that are about, or they are the one that are about different types of data. We can have a table We can have a table of students, you can have a table of teachers, you can have a table of subjects, you can have a table of courses, you can have a table of anything, you know. But as long as it is having the same structure of data, then that can be an independent table. You can think of it. Don't say that you're going to have a table of females and the table of men. I don't think those may need to be two tables. They can be the same table, but you have where you can ask for sex, male or what, or female. So just like the way you can fill these daily forms, that many people can fill a form, and this information can be saved in what? In a table that can suit that particular form. You get it? So we're going to see how we create different tables. So you can look at different examples of what? Of tables. Now, for example, we're going to create a table of what? Of users. For us, we're going to create a table of users. Okay? So meaning that that table is going to contain particular data called what? Called users. Okay? So let's go ahead and create this table. So that is the syntax of creating a table is like this. Okay? You just simply write create table. Okay, let me just show you from W3 Schools so you can get it clearly. Okay. So I've learned how to create a table. Database, so how to create a table. So to create a table, you just simply say create table. This is the syntax. You say create table, then you give the table name, and then you start giving the columns with their data types. Column with their data type. So it means that every column that will be in that particular table, these are the columns. I think this one that understanding. Okay, these are that are standing. They're the one that you call columns. So for us, we're going to create these top ones, and then each column will have a particular data type. Okay. So we have a lot different types, different data types of what? Of SQL. Of database tables. For example, we have variable character. Variable character is the one that we use to do what? Is the one that we use to store variable characters. For example, if you expect the character to be changing and it will have a maximum number of characters, then you'll have to store it in what? In variable characters. So there are so many data types. We'll come here and look at them. But for now, we're just going to go with integers and what? And variable characters. So let's go ahead and create a table. So you say to create a table, you just simply write, let me put here first a comment, how to create a table. So to create a table, we just simply come and say create table, and then this table you give it a what? You give it a name. So I can call it maybe users. Okay, users. Okay. So after I open bracket like this, and then I start giving the column and the data type of that column. For example, these users will have an ID, and this ID will be of type of what? Of integer. So that's how we do it. So another thing, this user will have a name, and this name is going to be a variable character because it's going to change every time. Okay, people don't have same length of names, so have to make it variable character. So to make variable character, just write var char like this, var char, and then you open bracket. Always remember to open bracket and close them, and then you pass the number of maximum values or maximum character that you expect here. So I can say 255, and then I come and put here a comma again, and then I can as well duplicate. Okay, and then put my what? Put the country. Put the age. So our age is going to be also what? An integer. Okay, so int, and then we create now the age, and then the next thing is going to be the country. Okay, the country. Okay, so the country is going to be also varchar, and then you pass the what? You pass the maximum number of these variable characters. So I can say they're also 255. So this can be pretty enough for me to get a table that I can start with. And that's how we do it. Create table, and then you specify which table name you want, and this table should not be existing in that particular database. And then after, you go ahead and give the properties. For example, I've given the property of ID, the property of name, and the property of what? Of age and the country. So let's go ahead and copy this. And by the way, in integer, you don't need to specify the what? The length of the character that you need. So I'll go ahead and copy that and then go and run it, okay? So I'll come here and say SQL, and then I paste it, and then press go, so I can do what? It can create, it can run. So the table has been, the SQL has been ran successfully, and we can see here, when it comes to practice, we have at least one table, which is this one, okay? We have only one table called users. So if you click on this users, of course, we'll have to see a list of our users. But you can see there is no one there. There is no one in that list. So that is one way of creating a table. So to delete a table, you do it like this. To delete a table, you just simply say how to delete a table. Okay, so to delete a table is simple also. You just simply write drop table, and then you put the table name. For example, drop table users. So let me go ahead and post, and we see, and run this as, and we see. So I'll copy that and then come to SQL injection, and then come to SQL here tab, and then paste it there. Okay, so it means that this one is going to delete the table of what? Of users, because I want to show you how we do it in what? In the interface. Okay, so they will give you a job, they'll give you a question. Do you really want to delete users? I can say yes, meaning that they are going to be deleted. So if I come back to our table of practice, okay, or is it? I'm not refreshed. Okay, so come to table of practice now. And you can see there is no any table there. So now let's go ahead and now create. So this is how we create a table using what? Using SQL. Now let us say go ahead and create a table using what? Using the interface. So to create a table using the interface, you just simply come to your database, and then you'll see, if you don't have a table, you'll see these things. If you already have a table, you can just simply create it from here, okay? Because this one will be here. If it is not here, it will be next door to the table itself. So I'm going to go ahead and create from here a database. I will just simply say practice, like the one that you did before. So you just put here the number of columns that you want in that database. You begin with the database name, the table name. So I can come and say practice, like this. And then I give here the number of columns, okay? So if I want 4 columns or 5 columns, I can go ahead and put them. Then I go and say go. So after doing that, the next thing that I'll have to do, I'll have to give the columns their names and their properties. So I can simply say here the column name is going to become ID. And then after doing that, you specify the type of this column. So these are the different data types that MySQL supports. So I can go ahead and say it is integer, and then I say the length of this. This is not necessary, as we said. For the integer, you don't need to specify the length. And then after, I go ahead and say the default value. So if we don't insert anything here, what should be the default value? You can leave it as none. Collation, you just leave it as it is. And then attributes, leave it as it is. Then the most important part here, you can say it if it can be null or not. But the most important part here is auto increment. So auto increment means that everything that will be adding here, the record that will be adding here, it will be automatically increasing. So it will be increasing automatically, and that need to be a what? A primary key. So a primary key is a unique identifier that we have in a database. That is very important. If you need to identify anything in a database, we need a primary key. So a primary key is a unique identifier of of database. So if I want to make this first column the ID to be having a primary key, to have a primary key that will automatically be increasing, I'll have to mark the here as it is here. Then it means that here as index, you see it has been marked as as a primary key. So you need to have only one primary key in your tables. Okay. So the next thing I can say now the name. So after I can set is variable character, and then it is maybe 255. So once you set the name and this up to this here, the name, the name of the attribute, the name of the column, the type of the column, and then the length, then these others are optional. You can leave them. But the most important part, always make sure that when you begin your table, it has an ID, and that ID at least should be auto-incrementing for the better safety. It can work even still without auto-incrementing, but for the better, you better include auto-incrementing ID. So after we have the name, the next thing that you're going to have, we say that we have the age. So age is an integer. I don't specify the length, and then maybe I can have country. Okay, so maybe I can put sex, and then sex is going to be also a variable character that's going to have a maximum of maybe 10 letters. Okay, female, FE 6. Okay, so maximum can be 10. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do, we're going to have maybe country. Okay, country, and then country is going to be variable character, and maybe 2255. Okay, so that is enough for us to come up with a table. Okay, so now after you've done that table, you can even cheat and preview your SQL. So to preview your SQL, you just simply come here and bottom before you run it. So you want to see your SQL before you run it, and you see this icon here, preview SQL. So when you click on preview SQL, you'll be able to see the SQL of creating a table. So I can as well copy it and even modify it somewhere, then I run it by myself. You see, this is this is the SQL. Create table, practice. Okay, the practice. So this is a practice table inside practice, and then after we give it ID, it is integer, not null, and it's auto increment. So this is how you implement the auto increment. So not null is an optional parameter, but it means that this one cannot be cannot be null. It means that when you're inserting something, we must include there something. Okay, so that is how you create the the database. The table. You can as well remove even these options. These ones, the engine. Okay, so after you've created the SQL, you can go ahead and run it. Or before you even leave this space where we clicked on preview SQL, we can still run it from here. Okay. So let me go ahead. I've just messed up. Okay, so I'm going to put it here in SQL, and then I paste it here, and then I say go to run it. So when I click on go to run it, you see under practice we now have we now have a table. Under where is it? Practice, we have one table called practice. So if you want to add another table, you just come here to this new. Okay, click on this new, you'll be able to add another table. But for now, this is how we add there a table in the database. So you can see having a table of I that will store for us ID, a name, age, sex, and and country. So we'll stop from there today. In the next class, we will look at now how to insert there the data. I recommend you not to just watch. I really recommend you not to just watch, but watch as you do as you practice, and that's the best way of learning. So let us begin from there in the next lecture, where we're going now to look at how we can start adding their information as well as manipulating the information in the database. I hope you will not miss. If you have not subscribed to my YouTube channel, please kindly subscribe to my YouTube channel. And goodbye until tomorrow.